I've got quite a large collection now that is a bit unusual, shall we say, rather than the sort of run-of-the-mill stuff. And so I've got what I would call a potpourri of different things. For those of you not familiar with Cameroon, it's called Africa in miniature by some people because it's got a bit of everything. It's got mountains to the north, it's got savannas and tropical areas, rainforests and so on. So it's a bit of all of Africa sort of mixed into one. Okay, so as I said, hopefully you're now beginning to see this a bit larger. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's pretty good, yeah.
So it's nestled between Nigeria and the other countries around there are Chad, Central African Republic, Congo, Gabon, and Equatorial Guinea. And originally, of course, it was a German colony, not a French colony. And the name Cameroon actually comes from a Portuguese word, because the first people to sort of navigate around this area were the Portuguese. And if you look at the map here, I'll just point out a couple of major towns. Douala on the coast here, and what is now the capital, Yaoundé, here. And there's a river that flows out from the country into the Atlantic at Douala, which is called the River Waury. I don't know whether that's the correct pronunciation. But when the Portuguese visited this area, they went into this river and they found a lot of prawns or shrimps. And the Portuguese word for that is Cameroons. And I think it was anglicized, and the derivative of that is Cameroon. So it was the river of prawns, if you like. That was how it got its name. And then, that's not me.
No.
By the way, if I keep looking over here to this side, it's because I've got my notes on another screen here, which is why I keep looking off to the left. Yeah, so it was the Portuguese explorers that gave it the name, the Rio dos Camarões, and that's got turned into Cameroon. And in the scramble for Africa, all the European countries sort of tried to nab a bit, and the first people to sort of get a chunk of this was the Germans, and they called it Cameroon, spelt with a K. And you'll notice as we go through, the Cameroon has different spelling depending with whether you're German, French or English. It's K for German, Cameroon, Cameroon with double O-N for English, and O-U-N for French spelling. It's a reasonably sized country. If you're not familiar with it, it's about the size in terms of land area of Spain, double the UK. Population is now about 26 million. It's quite a reasonable sized country now. And Douala was is the main port and is an important town, second only to Yaoundé, the capital. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Douala now has a population comparable to Yaoundé, or maybe even larger. As you can see from its location, it's just a little bit north of the equator. So obviously it's a very hot climate, mostly in the range, as you can see from this diagram here. If I move this over a little bit and get rid of that. The climate tends to be pretty stable at about 80 degrees. So a bit of a change from here. Okay, so that's enough of the country. One of the things that we'll cover is that the changes in the boundaries with its neighbouring countries. So if we go on to the next slide, this shows the country boundary in 1901 on the left through to 1911, which is when it was German Cameroon. And then in 1911, it acquired an extra bit over on the eastern side, which was originally part of Chad, Ubangi Shari, and French Congo. And the reason it got this is because of something which I'm just looking up now, called the Agadir Crisis. Apparently the French wanted to move in and get protectorate over Morocco. The Germans weren't too happy, and there was a bit of bartering going on. And the idea was that they said, well, you can go into Morocco, but we want something in return. And they got an extra bit to add on to Cameroon. So that's why it ended up a little bit bigger. Now, what I'm going to do now is perhaps not appropriate for a French and Colonies Society, because I've got a few slides of covers from Germany. So I hope you don't mind if I present those.
Not at all.
Right, so there's only a few. So here we have the stamps, the German stamps that were used in German Cameroon from 1897 to 1914. The original stamps were the German ones overprinted Cameroon. And then in 1900, the quite well-known imperial yacht issues were done for all of the German colonies as they were then, ranging from 3 pfennig up to a 5 mark. So that's the stamps. I don't know much about them. It was just to make the Cameroon collection a bit more complete by starting with the German issues. I've got a few postal stationery items and a couple of covers and a picture postcard, which I'll go fairly quickly through. And by the way, is everyone still able to see the writing reasonably clearly?
Oh, yes.
It's legible, is it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So as I say, I've got a few postcards. This one's a German postcard. I don't know much about these. I'm just going to go fairly quickly through them, and maybe you can add to my knowledge if any of you are German collectors. One thing I have noticed about these is that the early ones just say Cameroon on the date cancel with no town. Is that something that's common, if anyone knows?
No idea.
No. So this is just a German one actually used in Cameroon. The next are a couple of postcards. One is the German one overprinted Cameroon, and the bottom one is now with the yacht, the Kaiser's yacht issue there. Again, still no town indicated other than just saying Cameroon. This was up into 1901 and 1899 are the two covers there. Now we've moved on to the ones with the Kaiser's yacht on. In 1904, they seem to have decided to put the towns on in the date cancel. So we've got one here from Victoria and another one from Douala. Notice the spelling of Douala, because that will actually change. It's D-U-A-L-A in the German spelling, and it gains an O as we move into the French era. Okay. Now, just a couple of covers using the stamps as 10 pfennig and a 20 pfennig. The lower one down here is Yaoundé, and again, notice the spelling. This is the German spelling with the J, and as we go into the French era, you'll notice that changes to a Y-O-U and N-D-E. And this is the last one. I said there weren't many. This is the last one. It's a picture postcard of a nice group of police, what was that? Police troop, local natives presumably lined up, and that's councillor with a couple of franked with a couple of the 5 pfennig stamps. Of course, this didn't last very long. In 1914, with World War I, the Germans realized they weren't going to be able to hold the colony for very long because they were surrounded basically on all sides by allies, British to the north in Nigeria, the French and Belgians from Belgian Congo. But they had quite a strategy. They decided that they weren't going to hold Douala on the coast because they would be outgunned there. So they retreated to the inland and took up defensive positions. And it's difficult to see on here. By the way, the sort of grey looking colour of the paper is because of the way that my scanner scanned this. You'll see that most of them have got this sort of greyish background. It's just the way the scanner scanned them. It's probably not easy to read on here, but basically what happened was that the French came in from the sort of eastern side, and Belgians came up here from the southern side, southeastern side, and British came in from the sort of northern side, and of course from the sea, landing in Douala. The Germans sort of retreated to the mountains, which is the northern region, and also down into what is now Equatorial Guinea, which was Spanish at the time. In fact, when they finally left Cameroon, also the Germans came out through Spanish Guinea and ended up back in Madrid. And what happened was then at the end of the First World War, the Allies, particularly the British and the French, decided to split the country. The British gained about, I don't know, 20% of the country, of the colony, bordering Nigeria, which is the British Cameroons. And that's, again, if you move on to the next slide here, this is a bit bigger diagram of the one previously. They call it the Northern Cameroons and the Southern Cameroons, which were administered by the British as part of Nigeria. And about 80% was taken over by the French. And that's obviously in blue here. So that was how it was partitioned. And go on. I've just got a single slide here of a postcard showing the British forces with local native troops here preparing to embark to attack Douala. This is embarking at Freetown in Sierra Leone. When the country was partitioned, the British section, the British Cameroons, the British issued German stamps overprinted with CEF, and there's just examples of 3 of them. There were 13 values in total. I don't, as I say, I don't really collect these. I concentrate on the French issues, but there are just 3 of the samples there. So now, and one final thing. This is just a single cover of, let me just get this right. Yeah, it's a Nigerian stamp, because obviously after all the ones overprinted CEF were used up, in the British Cameroons, they just used the stamps of Nigeria. And this is a cover going to the US from the Mill Hill Fathers, which is a fellowship of Catholic missionaries, apparently. So there's a cover sent during the Second World War to the US. So that's the end of the sort of, excuse me, back. So that part there is just the German bit and up to the First World War. What I've got now is where the French take over in that 8% region that was actually mandated to them by I guess it would be the League of Nations at that time. So when the French were taking over, the stamps that they were allowed to use were initially stamps from Dahomey and Gabon. And this is the only piece of mail that I have that was has the stamps of Dahomey being used in Cameroon. Because it wasn't long after that that they actually took some stamps and overprinted them, as you'll see in a minute. So this is just a postcard, a picture postcard, where the sender, presumably something to do with the Allies, was using stamps of Dahomey to send a card back to Switzerland. And you'll notice at the bottom, the cancel here, the Trésor, a post au armée, and the date is the 15th of November 1915. And actually at this point, the Germans hadn't actually totally surrendered at this point. They didn't surrender until about February 1916. So presumably this was from the period just before the Germans surrendered. Now we actually get to the first sort of issues, if you like, that were issued by the French. These were issued actually on the 10th of November. So if you just go back, that was the 15th of September. So in fact, the stamps were available, but I guess they'd only just been printed and were not distributed at this point. So these were issued on the 10th of November. They are stamps of Gabon, which is the neighboring French colony. And they were overprinted in Gabon, Corps Expeditionnaire Franco-Anglais Cameroon. They're on stamps of Gabon, and if you look, most of them, all but one, say actually Afrique Equatorial Gabon, apart from this one in the middle here, this 10 centime issue is actually a bit of an oddball. It's Congo Francaise Gabon. So that's different from all the others. And in fact, it's not worth any more. In fact, it's probably worth less. The one that is rare is the one that has the Afrique Equatorial Gabon on it. So that's worth several thousand. So it'd be nice to have one of those. So it's just a bit of an anomaly that this one has a different colony name, but yet is the common one. I don't know why that was. There weren't many of these printed. Covers with these on are, I would say, scarce, tending towards rare. And of course, with a lot of these French colony overprints, forgeries abound. I'm fairly sure that most, if not all of these are genuine. The thing that you look for, apparently, is that the length of the writing from the C of Corps to the E at the end of Expeditionnaire should just be about the right length to go from the bottom of the stamp frame here to the top. And in most of mine, that is the case. I have on the next slide some that I believe are forgeries. These are a bit toned as well. But in fact, in these, it's clear to see that these are forgeries because the overprint goes the opposite direction. Instead of from bottom to top, it reads from top to bottom. But they're clearly forgeries. These, it's not so obvious from the overprint, although it is a little bit more ragged than the originals, but also the cancels give it away. This one's cancelled in Libreville, so it's not appropriate. So by and large, it's fairly easy, well, relatively easy to spot the forgeries. Right, so they were the first issues, and I've only got one cover with these on. As I said, I would say these are quite difficult to come by. And this one is a registered cover back to France, franked with 3 of the 10 centime and 1 with the 5 centime. Again, notice it's the Congo Francaise, whereas the other one is the Afrique Equatorial. This one's from someone, I guess, who was either a worker in a hospital or possibly even a patient, because they've written in the top left here, just below the recommandé, it looks like R. Jolly, Hospital, Douala. So could have been someone maybe involved in the fighting, needed hospitalization. Notice that the cancel is spelt with the German. So this is a German canceller that they must have just used that was lying around in the office. Still got the Cameroon spelt with a K. And just the R in the box in violet. No registration label on this one. The second issue is this one. This was used on stamps of Middle Congo, sorry, of French Congo, and it originally was going to say Occupation Anglo-Française to Cameroon, but the French didn't like that because they thought that they got the whole of most of the Cameroon, so they obliterated the word Anglo from here. And it looks a bit, unbalanced because the Anglo word has been removed. And again, these are relatively scarce, not quite as scarce as the first issues. Although having said that, I believe there's only one cover known with these stamps on. So whether these were just done for philatelic reasons, I'm not quite sure. You can also notice that when these were overprinted, they were overprinted both vertically and the one direction reads up and one direction reads down. And in fact, there are tête-bêche pairs. I think the way these were printed was that the sheets were put in and half of them were printed, and then the sheet was taken out and turned around and put in again. And that's why you end up with some reading up or some reading down. Needless to say, I don't have a cover with these stamps on. And finally, in terms of overprints, another set we've done, again with this Occupation Française du Cameroun without the Anglo word in. This time was on the Moyen Congo issue, which is shown here. Again, these are not common, but definitely more common than the first issues. As I said earlier, I was going to just put a few things in and relatively uncommon in terms of being part of a mainstream collection. So this one is a piece of postal stationery from Moyen Congo, from Middle Congo, with the overprint. There's very little postal stationery from this colony. I think there's only about 4 items, whereas most of the other colonies, there's a plethora of postal stationery. And again, this is quite scarce, this one. In 20 odd years of collecting, I think I've only seen one other one. That doesn't mean to say that they don't exist. And they've got an example of one used. It's a cover to another French colony, actually, Conakry in French Guinea. And again, notice at this early time, this is 1917, that they're still using the Douala Cameroon with a capital K to cancel. And also they're still using up all of the German registration labels. We're now moving on to the first set that was produced with the overprint Cameroon Occupation Francaise. These again using stamps of neighboring Moyen Congo, and this issue was done in 1916 and 1917, and it was used for a long time afterwards. You see these being used well into the 1920s. The other thing to note about this set is that some of them were printed on plain paper and some of them are on chalk surface paper. It's difficult to see in this here in this image, but probably the best ones to show that are this one here is on plain paper. It's just a bit dull, whereas this one, the 10 centime, is on chalk surface paper, and you can see that it's a lot whiter around the edge of the stamp. And I've seen both chalk surface and plain paper on basically all of the different issues. Whenever they're printing these overprints, there's always varieties and errors and things like that. I'm not quite sure when an error becomes a variety, but and some people love to collect these. I normally don't, but these came up at a sensible price, shall we say, and I thought I'd get them. The 2 major varieties that you find are this one here, where there's, I'll zoom in here, I think, to give you a better view. And normally there's a full stop after the word Francaise, but it's missing in these 2. And the other thing is that the S in Francaise is inverted. So here, by the way, can you see my pointer?
Yes.
Can you see it?
Yes, fine.
Yeah. Normally the S is the right way up, obviously, but in one position in the sheet, it's actually inverted here on the right-hand stamp.
Oh, yes, yes.
It's, again, if I zoom in. Does that update, by the way, on your screens fairly quickly?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, right. Ah, good.
Even in Australia.
Yes, it does, even that far away.
All right. Yeah, so clearly, I think you can see that the S on the right-hand stamp is inverted compared to the one on the left.
Right.
And I've got, as I say, I was very lucky in finding not all, but most of the stamps with that inverted S. As I said, these stamps were used for quite a while and are not particularly rare on covers. Here's a cover to, again, a neighbouring colony in Africa. It's just to Senegal with the 35 centime stamp. Again, they're still using the German registration label and cancel. One of the things that I like about this particular cover is that with a lot of the French colonies, you find that they never use just a single stamp. There's often several stamps on the covers, whether that's because they wanted to make it look pretty and make it look philatelic, or whether the stamps were not available. But it's nice to see the correct stamp being used for the correct rate, which is 35 centimes for the 10-cent letter rate and the 25 centime recommended fee. Again, another registered cover, still using the German labels and cancels. This one's a bit different in that it's an express. I think I've only ever seen this one. They seem to be quite difficult to find. I'm not quite sure what the express means, but I'm assuming that it means that when it's being delivered, they don't hang about. I don't see what the difference would be between an express from Cameroon to Paris, other than the normal rate. Does anyone know?
They pedal quicker.
It's definitely quicker.
Yes, I think the only speeded up part is from the office of receipt in Paris to the
recipient.
Yeah.
otherwise it
Telegram.
travels normally, I think, until that particular point. So someone does jump on a bike or a motorbike to deliver it.
All right. So as quick as possible once it's got to Paris, right?
Yeah, because I've got an example of mail that's come from abroad, gone to Paris, and then it's gone via the pneumatic tube.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stage.
Treated like a telegram.
Mm.
Yeah, but obviously the major part of the transit is getting from Cameroon to France.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't suppose it made a lot of difference, that extra 10 minutes saved.
Exactly.
Right. Again, because the postal stationery is not common, I thought I'd put some of the postal stationery in. There's a couple using this new overprint of Cameroon Occupation Francaise. Again, the one's to Gabon, Libreville in Gabon, and the one below it is to London. Mail to the UK was not that common. Most of it obviously back to France and still actually to Germany, because I guess a lot of the people were communicating with back to Germany.
I didn't realise they played billiards in Cameroon.
Yes, it's interesting. Some of the places that the letters go back to. Obviously, somebody wanting to get their table recloth maybe or buy one.
I think I'd fancy playing out there.
Yeah, I think wouldn't be very good.
Humidity.
By 1921, the Cameroons had now become a mandated territory through the League of Nations, and so the French decided to overprint more of the Middle Congo issues. This time, instead of saying Occupation Francaise, it just simply says Cameroon. Notice now we've got the French spelling of Cameroon. These are the standard issues, but different colours from the Middle Congo issues. A bit more gaudy, perhaps. I think they loved the gaudy combinations of colours. Some of these are quite horrendous, aren't they? So it's the ones actually we saw recently from the display that was given by, what was his name? The American chap. Of the leopard and the Bacaloi woman. Here's a couple of covers. One an internal cover to Agadir, and one registered cover back to France. Notice now, however, that they're still using the German spelling, but they've now switched to a registration label that is a French registration label, but still using the German spelling of Yaoundé. Again, this is a piece of postal stationery. As I said, there were only 4 different ones that I've come across, and this is the 3rd one. This is a 15 centime leopard with additional stamps paying the rate to Germany. This is a 50 centime rate. Again, we're now in 1921, but they're still using the ones from 1916 with the Occupation Francaise overprint. And this is the last postal stationery item. This is the 25 centime. Again, the lower one is used internally, and the one above it is actually from 1932. These were issued in the 1921, and this is being used 11 years later. Of course, the rate has now changed, and so they've had to add a 25 centime stamp to pay the rate. Again, it's still internal. And again, just something a bit different. There were booklet stamps produced. There were only 3 different booklets produced for Cameroon. There was the one in 1916, 17, and 21. As you can see on the top left. These are still legible, by the way, in the top left. This text.
It's still like, it's fine.
It's fine, okay. The way that these were printed, the standard frame for printing the stamps was like this, in 3 banks like this of 25. But when they printed them for use in booklets, they printed them like shown on the left here in blocks of 4. And so it is possible when you see a cover with a pair of stamps on to determine whether it was actually from a booklet or not. There were only, as I said, 3 different booklets, one with the 5 centime, one with the 15, and this one here with a 25. And I've been fortunate enough to find this cover, which actually was in one of the articles produced by Marty Bratzel, I think. And you can actually see the selvage down here and here on this pair of 25 centime stamps. So I'm fairly confident that that is from a booklet.
Alan, were the printings done locally for these booklets?
I don't think so. I think most of apart from the very earliest overprints, most of the overprints were done in Paris.
All right.
Yeah. So even the Occupation Francaise ones were overprinted in Paris.
Right.
It was on that very, very first issue that were done locally in Gabon. This is just a registration cover back to Paris again. But notice now we've got the French spelling on the registration label of Douala with the OU, but we're still using the German spelling in the cancel. Bit strange, but that's the way they did it. And then throughout the 20s, the rates, I guess, were changing throughout the 1920s. And so they kept producing these provisional overprints to pay for the new rates that were appearing. These are not common on cover, surprisingly. I've got a few, but they're not very common at all. So here's just a couple. post-registration covers with a mixture of the overprints. We've now definitely used up all the registration labels from the German period, and we're now using the French ones. But still occasionally printing it in the German form. These, I found these quite a while ago now, a few years ago. I just liked them. They got the Cameroon stamps on. They're uncirculated. They're actually German postcards. They've all got the frankings, a 5 centime frankings on. As I said, they were never posted. But what's interesting, as you'll see in a bit, is that these particular images were used later as the stamp designs. This one is a liana bridge made out of liana vines. This is a pasture with cattle in, and this is a Lamido woman. And you know, as you'll see in a bit, that they use these designs in the French stamps that were produced for Cameroon, and yet they're German postcards. So I don't know how that came about. So here we are. This is the issue. This scene here is very reminiscent of that postcard with the cattle. One of the things that was produced significantly in Cameroon is rubber. So the next design shows rubber tapping, tapping a rubber tree here. This is 1925. And again, if you look at this one here, this is the Liana Bridge across a river. And there's some postage dues. I don't think I've ever seen any used on cover. They probably exist, but I've not seen them. More issues produced as the rates changed. Again, some quite weird color combinations that were used through to 1927. I haven't produced a lot of covers in this presentation, but to be honest, most of the covers I have do have these stamps on because they were used for a large period from 1920s right through the 30s, even into the 40s. I've just put a few in. This first one, I bought this because it actually has all 3 of the different designs on. The cattle, the rubber tapping, and the Liana Bridge. But also it appealed to me because it was addressed to the Royal College of Science, London, SW7, which is now Imperial College of London. And it just so happens that that's the place I went to for my degree. So it had, you know, a nice extra meaning to me that it actually was sent to that address. I then investigated this Dr. Harwood, and lo and behold, he was actually a reader in analytical chemistry, which just happens to be what I specialized in when I was there. So it just made even more, sense to me to get that one.
Yeah, very appropriate.
Yeah. Other than that, it's just a plain cover to the UK. Again, we've still got this disparity between the spellings, Douala in the cancel and Douala on the registration label. This one, in the 1930s, the airmails really took off, particularly from about 1935 onwards. And a lot of the mail that you get from that period onwards is all airmail, because obviously it made a significant improvement to the time taken to get stuff to back to Paris and to France and Europe in general. This one's actually quite an early airmail. In fact, the airmail service didn't actually fly from Cameroon. It was actually sent to Dakar in Senegal and then flown from there. So this is an early one, 1929, paying the 3 franc airmail charge from Dakar to to France. Here's another one. This one's a bit different. It says to Guatemala, which just happens to be the only other country I collect. So I had to have this one. It's probably philatelic. I don't know. It went via the US, via New York, and ended up in a little place called La Tinta. Again, it's using the stamps that we've just been seeing, the one with the cattle and the rubber tapping. Then in the 1930s, they were still using the issues I've just been showing you, but there were also omnibus issues basically for all of the colonies. There was the 1931 exhibition, the 1937 exhibition stamps as well. 1939 was an anti-cancer. There was the French Revolution ones in 1939. I haven't shown those here, but there's some covers which have those stamps on them. I try and, wherever possible, get commercially used covers, but that's not always possible. But I think most of them are. This one's got the, this one on the bottom here has got the anti-cancer one on. And it's 1939 and it's airmail. So this one actually is quite unusual. The one on the above, 1937. To actually find one that's just ordinary mail, not airmail. And that is the first part. I've split the thing into two parts so we could stop if people are getting fed up. So it's up to you. If you want, I've got more. If you want to move on and someone else give a talk, that's fine.
How do you feel, Pete? Definitely hush.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm for carrying on, frankly.
definitely.
Okay. So that's basically takes us up to just before the Second World War. I think the last cover there was 1939. So the second part is from 39 onwards, but I've really not covered much in terms of material from the 1950s. What I'm going to show is the stamps from the remaining time from 1940 to when it became independent in 1960. And then I'm going to show some railway markings and some printed matter rates. So that's what I'm going to show here. So I'll be going fairly quickly through the stamps. So let's get this back. Is everyone seeing that okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so these were issued just before the Second World War. There's designs are this one here, which remember is very reminiscent of the postcard, German postcard, with this Lamido woman. I think Lamido is a word that means sort of not royal, but of high standing, shall we say? You know, what we would call posh in Yorkshire. So there's this design here. This one shows some waterfalls at Banyo, which is in the northern section of the country, where it's quite mountainous. And the other design is a elephants and a boatman paddling along in a pirogue, I'm assuming. And for some reason, it's decided to show two side by side, which I'll tell it not to. So that's that. And again, there's some postage dues. Never seen them, I don't think, on the cover. being used. Right, now we're heading into the Second World War. Like many of the colonies, once General de Gaulle had given his speech in, was it June 1940, the colonies, particularly the Central African colonies, sort of switched allegiance to the Free French, and to support the de Gaulle, they overprinted a lot of their stamps, either France Libre, which I guess the communists, but Cameroon decided to put Cameroon Francaise, and the date, 27th of August 1940, which was when they sort of switched allegiance and went with de Gaulle. So basically they took a lot of the stamps from that 1939 issue and overprinted them with this overprint Cameroon Francaise and then the date. And that's, we've got several of those here shown here for all of the stamps, not only the 1939 issues, but any previous ones like these here. These are the 1939 New York Exposition stamps overprinted. And basically everything that they got, they overprinted it. Again, because these overprints were done quickly, there were often errors. And again, people love to collect all these different errors. I've just got a couple of blocks. I won't go through them, but basically it's just where the dates and the lines and the letters have been either omitted or altered in some way. One thing that they did do is that they wanted to support the Free French and de Gaulle, and to show their sort of support and loyalty to the cause, they overprinted a lot of the stamps with surcharges so that people could support and show their support by buying these stamps with quite, in some cases, quite large surcharges. So we have here these ouvres de guerre with +2, +3, and +5 francs. Can everyone see those? So that this was to raise money to support de Gaulle. This one here, this set here, says +5 francs Spitfire. I don't know why they chose that, but they decided that they would, people, I guess people knew what the Spitfire was, and it was a thing that was helping to win the war. And so that they overprinted it like that. The actual funds didn't go to buy Spitfires or anything, it was just put into the general kitty, I guess, to buy armaments and support the Free French. Additionally, this set here, which says Spitfire Fund, 10 francs, General de Gaulle. So you pay your £1.25 and an extra 10 francs for the privilege. The last ones at the bottom here is to support a local hospital fund. Douala, up until about 1931, I think it was, only had a hospital that was for Europeans. The general population didn't have hospital. They were basically treated by missionaries and such like. But by the I think it was 1931, a hospital was actually built, and it was named the La Quintini Hospital after some doctor that had worked in the country. And this was to support funds for ambulances, I guess, ambulance. The next few slides show usage of these. These are really all philatelic because, as I said earlier, it was really just to show your patriotism by buying these stamps and sending them to your friends on covers. So this one is from someone in the police. Someone in the Commission de Police with the set on. Obviously considerably over franked for the use. This one is the Spitfire set of 4 overprinted. It was designated Spitfire Day, I think it was. It was the 8th of December, was designated as the day of the Spitfire, and they issued these. You find them often on cover like this, with not actually being sent, without any address on. This also has a hand stamp with the Spitfire and the Cross of Lorraine there and the date. As I said, most of these are philatelic, but I have actually got one here. The lower one is actually being used. The set is there, plus an additional 50 centimes to pay the rate to UK, to England. So I'm quite pleased with that one. It's very, I said, it's very rare to see them actually being used correctly. Here's the other Spitfire one, the pair. Again, it's philatelic. Again, it's the Commissioner of Police sending something to one of his friends. These are the some postcards of the actual hospitals. The first hospital is this one here, the Hospital of Douala, but only for Europeans. As you can see here, it says Hospital European. And, oops, what's happened there? Try again. Hospital La Quintini, that was the one that was designated for the local population and what the stamps were raising funds for. Here's a cover with that pair of stamps on them. Sent to internally, en ville as they say, to Nkong Samba. And another one. The only other ones that I've come across that are in this period are these. And these have got a tremendous surcharge on them. It's plus 100 francs, which is phenomenal, isn't it? It's like buying a £1 stamp and then having to pay £100 extra. But obviously they did it. They bought the stamps and supported the cause by coughing up an extra 500 francs for the set. There's a cover, again, internally used with the full set on. I think Valmy was a sort of French victory, wasn't it, at Valmy? I think they're all relying on, patriotism and that to raise the funds. Like most of the colonies, they produced issues with France Libre. This one shows the Cross of Lorraine. And the first airmail set down at the bottom. In addition, there were also the Vichy issues, never actually, they were printed in France, but never actually used here in Cameroon. Again, these were printed and for all of the colonies, I guess. This is an airmail issue. Again, it's the Vichy issues because we don't have the RF. These were issued in 43, and again, these were never actually used there. Now we come on to some provisionals. Use of the France Libre is overprinted. There's a mutual aid one there as well for the Red Cross. Oops. I'm going to go fairly quickly through these. There's the Felix Ibu set, the Victory in Europe. These, again, were issued for all of the colonies. And now that the airmail stamps have reappeared, however, this time they do have the RF in them. So I guess they took the design and thought, well, it looks okay, we'll just add the RF and issue them. So that's what they did. And of course, they were used in Cameroon. There's the, again, the omnibus issues of Chad to the Rhine, set of 6, showing the progress of the war effort. And then in 1946, they issued this set with 4 designs on: the cattle, the woman again, bananas. And yeah, another staple thing that we produce in Cameroon is bananas. There's the archer and the horseman at the bottom. And then there's the boatman issue and some airmail issues as well. And a set of postage dues. At this point, actually after the Second World War, it actually became what's called a French trust territory. I'm not quite sure what the difference is between that and the what it was previously. Presumably there was some more freedoms for the people. And actually became independent on 1st of January 1960. For most of the rest of these issues were typically omnibus issues issued throughout the colonies. There's a UPU one, Colonial Welfare Fund, and the centenary of the military medal. And then this almost last set in the 50s, showing really the produce of the country and a bit about the fauna and flora and any other features of the country. So there's the banana issues there. Coffee is another staple that's produced in Cameroon. And logging, showing transportation of logs. Wildlife and Douala, the port. And the one at the bottom is a depiction of this thing called a Kapsiki Peak, I'll get it right. It's in the northern part of Cameroon. It's a special geological feature. It's a volcanic plug, and that's the plug, and all the surrounding part of the volcano sort of eroded away, and you're just left with this, what looks like a big peak, which is the actual plug of the volcano. That's in the north, in the mountainous region. A few more issues. One showing the dam, the hydroelectric dam. Another anniversary of the liberation one, and a local physician and the Economic and Social Fund, Development Fund, set of 4 at the bottom. And still plugging away with their coffee, and an anniversary one of the first Cameroon government. A little bit about the flora here. So they're the issues, and that's the last of the issues. There weren't very many in the 50s. And I'm going to finish off now with a couple of themes, really. Well, I think there's 3 themes, one very small. First theme is railway. The second is censored mail. And the third one is printed matter. It's probably not easy to read this, so I'll zoom in and just concentrate on the map. Hopefully. Oh, is that? Yeah, there. That's visible. That's okay. Right, so the Germans were there first, obviously, and they actually put in some of the railway, and they had their own railway markings, which is shown just at the bottom right here. I don't have any of those because I don't concentrate on that German period. After the First World War, well, during the First World War, the Germans were retreating inland, and they kept destroying and badly damaging the line. There's a northern line which runs from Bonneberry here up to Nkong Samba. This is actually the River Wouri, I think they pronounce it, which bisects these 2 towns. So one, Bonneberry is on the northern side of the river, and Douala, now we're spelling it French, it's on the southern side here. And obviously there was no railway across this, basically an estuary dividing these 2 towns. So there was a northern line that ran up here and a line that ran from Douala out to the east. The Germans did a good job of trying to destroy it all, and the French did not get it back into operation until about 1919. They extended the line out here to the capital Yaoundé, and in the 1950s, I think it was, they extended it further right up to the northern region here. But for most of the period we're talking about, it really only went to Yaoundé. Oops, says Daisy, it does not preview. Try again, that's better. So when the French took over and extended it, they introduced the usual sort of markings. What do we call them? Wigglies. Is that the phrase?
John Whiteside.
Yeah, I think that was it. An undulé or something, wasn't it? The French word.
Undulé, yeah. Undulé.
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 Yeah, and so what I'm showing here are the councils that were used really from about 1921 right through to the well, even as far as 1960. As I said, there were 2 major lines, the northern line from Bonneberry up to Nkong Samba, what they call the central line from Douala out to Yaoundé. And there's a little offshoot line, this one here, the third one down, Atele to Mbalmeo. That was just a little sideline, but most of them, the councils relate to the 2 lines, the central and the northern line. Here it shows the dates and the lettering on the actual councils. my understanding is that no matter which way the train was actually going, whether it was going from Bonnebury to Nkonsamba or the other way around, they still use the same cancel.
Yeah.
But unlike on some others that I've come across where they do actually have two different cancels for the different directions. But as far as I can see, they just had one cancel, irrespective of the direction of the train.
Yeah.
So these are the French cancels that were used. Most of them have this wiggly around the edge, but later on, these here at the bottom, they're more like the normal sort of date cancels that you see without the wigglies. Some of these are quite common and some are quite rare. I don't understand why the difference exists, but maybe it's something to do with the dates and the usage at different periods. There's a couple of cards, postcards, showing the train arriving from Douala to Yaoundé. That's the central line. And some of the viaducts and the bridges that they had to build to get that line put in. There's a ravine with a bridge across. It doesn't look well supported to me from that picture. But so here's the first cancel. This is the type D that showed earlier. A commercial cover back to France, cancelling the 2 25 centimes. That's 1929, quite relatively speaking, early-ish. The next cancel is type E. This one is 1940. This one, 1958, so quite late, this one. This one is Frank with a couple of the elephant issues, and it's actually during the wartime period, so it's Francaise Militaire, airmail, and this is just paying the airmail portion of the fee. This is type F, 1938, a commercial one again, 65 centime rate. Type H, this is Douala to Yaoundé, the central line. It's both of these. This one's not airmail. It's 50 centime back to Paris. And it's got one of these anti-TB labels on there, which are nice. And the fact that it's actually caught the cancel as well. This one, I like at the bottom, you don't find much going from Cameroon to Harbin, which is somewhere in China, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Via Trans-Siberian. So this, I guess, flew from Cameroon to France, to Paris, and then went by rail, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So that's quite an unusual one. And it's also got the railway cancel. Now we go on to a slightly different type, type I. This is an internal one. Cancel with the France Libre issues. These were very prevalent in the 40s. I've got lots of covers from the 1940s where these were used well after the Second World War finished, well into the late 40s, early 50s. Another thing I haven't mentioned so far, but missions were very popular in Cameroon. Missions from a variety of countries, Swiss, Sweden, and predominantly actually American missions, American Protestant missions. And a lot of the mail, particularly internal mail in the 30s, is between these missions, and also mail going back to America from the missionaries back to, I guess, family and friends back in America. And there's an example there. And this type L, we've lost the Whittleys around the edge now. And this one is going to Italy. Again, not a very common destination, but definitely more common than China. Okay, that's the end of the railway mail. The next section, which I'm going to zoom in on, is censored mail. And I've taken this from the Francaise Colonies Philatelist, the American journal. And I haven't put a lot of covers in this display. I've just kind of put one in because there is an awful lot of mail that is this period with all these different cancels on. Basically, the mail was processed in one of two places, really, with either Douala or Yaoundé, and they had these hand stamps, and either Commission A, which was Douala, or Commission B, Yaoundé. And these are the commonest ones you find, typically the ones on the left-hand side here, which just says Control Postal, the name of the territory, and Commission B or A. The ones to the right of those two are less common, particularly the Control Telegraphique ones. This one over here at the top right, I've never seen that one, so it must be pretty rare. And it's also Commission C, which I guess is a smaller town and handled much less of the mail than the two major towns, which are Douala and Yaoundé. In addition to the main cancel here, there was also these smaller circles with numbers A1 to A5, and you find all different combinations on covers. There's also for Commission B, that's Yaoundé, a B1 and a B3 as well. As I said, I've got quite a lot of censored mail, but I've only put a couple of covers in. So you can see this one here has got the Commission A and Control Postal Territory du Cameroon, but it's also got this one as well, the sort of inverse one, the negative, I guess. Don't know why they did it twice. It's been opened and resealed, and it's got this sort of eye-shaped par authorité militaire, and it's been sent Francaise Militaire FM to the UK, to Reading. So that's got a bit of everything, and it's got the A3 here as well. So this one's quite a good one to put into the display because it's got most of them on there. This one is Commission B, and it's from Bafia, and it's got a B1 circle there. And again, it's been censored twice. The left-hand censored looks like it's the French, and I'm assuming this one is British on the right-hand side, so censored twice. It's going to America. So that's censored mail. So as I said, I've got lots, but I wanted to put those two in because I think they represent the majority of the mail the Censored Mail. And the last part, you'll be pleased to know, is foreign print and matter rates. As I said a moment ago, a lot of the mail was mail between the missions, which were very prevalent in Cameroon. And just some examples. And because I guess money was an issue for these missions, they were always wanting funds, and they tried to minimize expenditure. They sent a lot of their mail at print and matter rate to save money, I guess. So we've got a couple of examples here. One from the American Protestant mission at a Bangum Bang, and that's sent in 1937, which if we look up here, it's actually this rate here, 30 centime rate, which is correct. And then another one from a different mission in Metat, again to the US, franc 45, which is right. In order to raise funds for these missions, they produced a sort of booklet, pamphlet, explaining what all the good works that these missions were doing. And the idea was that you subscribe to these magazines or pamphlets. And one such pamphlet is the drum call. And these are envelopes that presumably had at one time these pamphlets or magazines inside them that were being sent back to the subscribers to this magazine back in America. And they've got different rates on them. So this one's 3 times 35, 105. This one's the 50 centime rate. And here's a later one in 1942, going back to Ohio at 50 centime also. I've got quite a lot of these. They're not difficult to find. As I said, a lot of the mail was missionary type mail. But I've also managed to get this. I actually got one of the pamphlets, or maybe you want to call them, the drum call. This was from April 1946. It was actually in this wrapper at this time, in 1946, when this one was sent. They must have moved from sending them in an envelope to actually using wrappers. And this is a wrapper. It's got the 80 centime, which is the correct rate. And it's being sent back to Kingston, New York. And it's quite interesting reading these because they're very, very flowery, evangelical writings in them. It sounds really strange these days to see that sort of evangelical prose. The wrapper has got 80 centimes on it, and it was it's actually got this drum call in it. And the person who's received this wrote on the back of the wrapper, making a comment saying that it took 177 days for it to arrive from Cameroon back to America.
6 months.
Yeah. And that's the end.
Right.
That
Well,
was excellent. Very good.
thank you very much indeed.
There's a lot that I've missed out from my collection, but I just wanted to give you a flavour of the less common things,
Yeah,
really.
Absolutely. Thank you
Very
very
good.
much indeed, Alan. It's been
Yeah.
most entertaining, and I found it
And,
pretty comprehensive.
and could we go,
and
is it possible, sorry, is it
Yeah.
possible to go back to the Trans-Siberian cover, which was about 4 back in the,
Yes, if you just
yeah.
bear with me a moment,
Yeah.
I can get that back.
There it is. Yep. We've just gone past it.
Just, oh,
No, yeah, two
Yeah,
more on.
there it is. I'll just
That
make
one.
that bigger again.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, that one's got a Jusquoir on there, Jusquoir Paris. So it looks like it didn't travel by air to Paris.
Oh. My interpretation was that Jusquoir means as far as Paris by air.
That's
Oh,
correct.
okay. All right.
I might
okay.
be wrong, but that's
No,
my
that's-
reading of the
that's
word
correct.
Jusquoir.
That's correct.
Yeah. So as
Hey,
far as.
Airmail to Paris.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
And it's probably
Yeah.
Japanese controlled Manchuria, actually.
Yeah.
Is that Manchuria?
Yeah, it's the coal mining area in northern China now, but it was Manchuria, Japanese controlled puppet state of Manchuria,
Yeah.
Manchukuo.
Yeah. Finding covers from Cameroon to other countries, particularly non-European countries or not America, is very difficult. Because obviously most of the mail is going back to France or elsewhere in Europe, apart from these missionaries, which you get a lot of mail going back to America.
Yes, thank you, Alan.
Excellent.
Yeah, brilliant.
Right.
Lovely.
That was saying, Alan, I found it most interesting and informative. I have seen some of your material before, but it's a long, long time since.
Yeah.
Going back to when we went to Stephen Holder's
Yes, probably so.
the
Yeah.
last field day. And thank you very much indeed.
Okay. Do you want me to stop sharing now?
Yes, you can do. Okay. Right. Well, it's 4 o'clock now. Chris has got some material. Shall we carry on for another while?
Of course. Yeah.
Well,
I'd love to, but I've got to get to the solicitor before he closes to be identified.
Don't you know who you are?
Well,
The nurse will tell you.
I mean, he did 18 months ago because he did another piece of work for us, and I was identified and acceptable to them then. And he says, no, this is more than 12 months, so I've got to go and be identified again.
Right.
Pay them more money.
Right. Okay. Chris, are you happy to carry on?
I can do a short display if you'd like me to do a short display, yeah.
Yeah, if you would. So you share your screen?
There we are. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yes.
You can see it. Oh, good. Okay. Next to the Austerlitz railway station in the south of Paris, there is today a massive hospital complex, Pitié Salpêtrière. It was actually the one where Princess Diana was taken. Salpêtrière in English, of course, is simply saltpeter. And the complex began when they moved the arsenal, the production of powder in the arsenal from the Bastille area, where it was a bit unsafe because the population was increasing, down to this point. But shortly after it moved, they opened a prison. Well, it began as a poorhouse, then it added a prison. And for most of its life, it really was a poorhouse. It had a postal service for quite a long time, for almost a century, but it's very rare. You don't often see it. There's the first marking, which is a post box, very tiny little postmark. You can see it there, RZ. And we don't know what RZ stands for, and I don't think we'll ever find out. But there we are. It was a post box belonging to Office H, which is the nearest office at the time. The letter there, it's a very sad letter. Basically, it's a lady in desperate straits. She's writing to the parish priest of her native town, trying to find out if he knows anything whether her family is still alive, because her letters are not received. She's receiving no replies. She has a brother in Paris. She saw him 2 months ago, and effectively he wanted her dead because he wanted to inherit whatever little amount she got. So it's a very sad letter. It really is extraordinary letter. But it gives you an idea of the state of the ladies living in here. During the revolution, it did actually become, for a short time, I did have a little prison there during the terror. We can see it there, the Maison Nationale de Femmes in 1794, and that's the hand stamp of the concierge running the prison, looking after it. It ceased to be a post box, and then in 1840 it became a normal post office. There's its local postmark with a big S in the centre of it. It's quite a rare mark, that. I've only seen another couple of them. That came from the, if anybody knows, the Djibouti sale back in the 1990s.
Mm.
I did manage to buy that, and I was quite pleased with that.
Mm.
I should think so.
It's a rare item. It became a full post office, and you do see a certain amount of material from there. It's often letters from people running the establishment rather than from the people living there, who, as I say, were essentially the poor ladies. A poor house road ladies, basically. There's another one. It actually became a supplementary office of Office H in 1850. There's the first day of the new tariff, 25 centimes on the 25th of July, on the 1st of July 1850, when the rate went from 20 to 25 centimes. And then for a very short time, for about 3 years, it actually becomes a little bit easier to find material because it was linked to the nearby railway station, Austerlitz, as a late fee, but without any, well, I say late fee, any letter could be posted there later than normal letters, as long as it was going to a destination served by the Austerlitz station. The service was actually free, it didn't cost you anything more, but you had to take your letter down to the post office at Salpêtrière, and you could hand it in up to 7 o'clock at night, it would leave the same night. So you do get a number of letters using that service. And now you've got the lozenge HS cancelling the stamps.
Hmm.
It ceased to have the railway service in 1855 when an office was actually opened in Austerlitz Station, HS4. So it then goes back to just serving the hospice, if you like, and it becomes much rarer then. There's an HS1, a baton cancellation, and below it you've got the only postage due of that type, 15 centimes, that has ever been recorded.
Oh.
They're quite rare by this time, becoming very, very little used. It did have the Paris Star 35 was allocated in 1863, and that was in use for 3 years. You can see from the right-hand side there, the amount of use of the office was tiny. 8,000 francs a year. The next smallest office was 95,000 francs a year. So it was very, very little used. It was renumbered in October 1866. It became Star 40. I haven't got a Star 40. There's 2 recorded on cover. And I last saw one in 1999. And I don't know where they are now, but they do exist, but they're quite rare. So there we are, that is Salpêtrière. And that is a picture of it. Yeah, I took a photograph of it when I was down there a few years ago. If you look up there, there you are, Hôpital La Salpêtrière. That's the entrance. And there's the great big beginning of the building behind.
Yeah.
There we are. Thank
Oh,
you
very
much.
good.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
There we are.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. That was great.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
I wish I knew where the 2-star 40 were. I mean,
Well, we must all make a point
they've
of
been
looking
shown for
out for them.
20 years.
Well, you'll have to save up. You'll have to save up anyway.
I'd have to save off. That is true. Yes, you're probably looking at 50,000 euros.
50,000, something
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
Colossal amount. Colossal amount. But why? You know, you must have them sort of secretive in a cellar somewhere, and he sort of looks at them once a year or something. I don't know. Like these secret art collectors. There we are.
Okay, very good, very good.
Is that the sort of the rarest of the Paris postage places then, Chris? I mean, there can't be many that have got anything like as smaller throughput than that.
No, it was the smallest. As I say,
Yeah.
it has a postal service for a century, but you don't see much. Everything is rare from it, or nearly everything.
Yeah.
Simply because it was an old lady's hospice, really, and they hadn't got any, you know, they just couldn't afford postage.
Right.
And they hadn't got anybody to post to anyway, probably.
But presumably it wasn't a postal official, though. Presumably it was done by the staff, was it then?
No, there were 2 postal officials.
No, were there?
There were
No,
2, yes, there was one to look after the office and one to do the deliveries within the.
all right. That was an easy job then. No.
It probably wasn't very busy. Yes,
No.
that's true.
Yeah. Well, excuse me. Right. I think I'm still alive. Well, yet again, ladies and gentlemen, that's been the most enjoyable afternoon.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased that we decided to do this for the Northern Group, even though a fair number of the attendees do actually come from other regions, but all just to the bill. Would you like to do another one in a month or 6 weeks' time?
Yes,
Yes. Yeah.
yes.
Okay. I will speak with my compatriot, Chris, Steve, and we'll try and sort something out for you. Now, before we all go, after the last meeting, Jan asked me if I'd recorded it. And I must admit that I hadn't, because I thought it was something that Chris had to do. But apparently it is the job of the host. I've pressed the recording button, and there's a little red light flashing away above in the top left-hand corner. What the hell do I do now?
Did you record it? Did you record it locally to your own computer?
Yes.
Right. Okay. When we leave the meeting, you will find it will still be processing. So don't turn your computer off. Just leave it to finish processing, and it should save to the download area of your own computer.
Right. Excellent. And then presumably, Jan, you want me to forward it on to you?
Well, Chris knows how to upload it to the private area of YouTube. You don't need to send it to me. But Chris has done it now 4 times, so I think he's a better man than I am to tell you how to do it.
Right. Okay. Got out of that.
Sorry
one
about
nicely.
that, Chris. I just duck-shoved it.
You can always send it to me once it's uploaded, but you'll have to finish when we finish the meeting and we've turned off. You'll find it's still processing at your end, Peter.
Right. Okay.
Don't, for the love of God, turn it off. It'll take quite a long time, actually.
Right.
Then it should download onto your download area. Then you can send it to me and I'll upload it onto YouTube.
Okay. Lovely. Thank you very much.
Lovely.
Right. Well, keep
Thanks,
safe,
Peter.
everybody.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Jolly
you.
good.
Yeah.
Bye now. Bye now.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Wait.